and welcome to the Spa-Francorchamps circuit here in Belgium, where we are gearing up for qualifying. We're ready to set the grid for the Belgian Grand Prix, the last race before the summer shutdown. And let me tell you, there's a sense of excitement in the air. We've had torrential rain here in Belgium. FP3 was a complete washout. We got very limited running, but it is now dry. I can't believe it. The rain has abated, but we are expecting more rain through the session. 80% chance of rain, so it's going to be unpredictable, and we're quite used to saying that now in 2024. Qualifying has become unpredictable, and the weather is adding a different dimension to it as well. Do not forget, your reigning world champion and current championship leader Max Verstappen is taking a 10-place grid penalty this weekend, so he can't start inside the top 10 this weekend. So all eyes are looking to McLaren to see if they can get pole position here in Belgium. I'm Rosanna Tennant down in the pit lane, and in our commentary box, the lead commentator Harry Benjamin is joined by former F1 mechanic Mark Priestley. And guys, Formula One is unpredictable. I can't believe I'm saying it. I'm saying it over and over again to believe it, and it's even more unpredictable for this particular session because we don't know who's going to go well, because they haven't had much experience of these changeable conditions. It was so wet in FP3, wasn't it, Harry?
You're absolutely right, Rosanna. I mean, yeah, it was beset by bad weather, heavy rain throughout, barely any running, and of course the running we have had was on Friday, and that was all in the dry, so we can only go off that if it's going to remain dry. But we think there might be more rain possibly halfway through qualifying as well, so then we are, as you say, very much into that mixed rain territory. So we don't know. Based off the form book from Friday, Red Bull are looking good, particularly Max Verstappen, but of course, as you said, he's got that grid penalty, so really this looks like it should be McLaren, but these changeable conditions change things up. The likes of Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes can suddenly start to play. Cooler temperatures helping the Mercedes as well. Just seeing risk of rain 80%, Rosanna.
I know, that's pretty certain. But as I look around the circuit now, as I look up towards Eau Rouge, the grandstand is absolutely packed. There is no rain. Dark clouds, yes, lingering and hovering around, but at the moment, no rain. Mark Priestley, you've been there, you've done it, you've worked inside the garages, especially, of course, at McLaren. How are they going to be approaching this session? Have you got to get out there and get a time on the board straight away, just in case the heavens open, or do you wait and see who blinks first?
Well, the easy answer is to say you need to be on the track at the right time with the right tyres on, but of course that's an easy thing to actually just say. Doing it is a different thing altogether. That is going to be the challenge, though, because if you think back to Silverstone, where we had similarly sort of changeable conditions, it was different parts of qualifying and even different parts of the same racetrack had very differing levels of grip at different times. It's going to be the same here. So, yes, you need to have the car heavily fueled, because unlike on a normal dry session where you might want to minimise the weight penalty and have a little amount of fuel in, just do one flying lap, come back in, make some changes, think about going again. Here you want to be fueling it long, because you just want to be out there on track. You never know when the quickest time is going to be. You just need to be out there for when it is.
And of course, it's a very long lap here, 7.004 kilometres. That means you kind of need to stay out there and use your track time wisely, because you don't get many bites of the cherry, do you?
No, not at all. And it can be completely different conditions in one part of the circuit to the other. We are in the Ardennes countryside, kind of close to the border of Germany and the Netherlands here in Belgium. But the thing is, it could be absolutely pouring with rain through Les Combes, but round by the start-finish straight, it could be bone dry. So that's the other thing. If you get caught out, to jump on top of what Mark was saying, it's a long lap, and that can change your situation in a heartbeat. You only get 18 minutes in this first part of qualifying, and I think traffic management might be a thing as well, because we saw it in some of the junior categories, and we're even seeing it now. They all try and get to the end of the pit lane.
Yeah, that was pretty dangerous by the Haas.
Copy. That was both Haas's pulling out just in front of Oscar Piastri right at the end of the pit lane to try and get track position as they all queue up waiting for that green light. But we saw actually yesterday in F3 qualifying, Rosanna, all of them bunching up right in the final corner to try and get a bit of tow, a bit of slipstream. So I'm not saying it's going to be as full of carnage as that, but it's something to factor into particularly in Q1.
Certainly is. DRS is disabled for this session. It's a wet session. Lando Norris is at the front of the queue waiting to leave the pit lane. He was fastest in the FP2 session. What can he do today? He had a bit of a scary moment here in qualifying, didn't he, a year or a couple of years ago? Let's hope he can keep it on the black stuff today. We've got a green light at the end of the pit lane. Lando Norris leading the cars out tentatively. Clouds, low clouds lingering, and let's hear what he's got to say.
It's possible in these conditions we should go for it on the first time lap. We think Class 2 rain 8 minutes into the session.
Class 2 rain. I'm not quite sure what that means. Mark, you may be able to help us with that one, but Harry, here we go then. Q1 is underway. Get that fast lap on the board. That's what Will Joseph's telling Lando Norris. What will everybody do in this first part of qualifying? Who is going to get through to Q2?
Thanks, Rosanna. 17 minutes and 17 seconds rain of Q1. I suppose it depends how many classes of rain there are, Mark.
Well, every team just categorises these different risks to their own on their own scale. So it's probably 0 to 5, I would imagine. Class 2. Not that bad, but bad enough.
Well, they are out there on the intermediate tyre. The sound you're hearing is Oscar Piastri just making his way to the end of the Kemmel Straight. And it is still wet. The track is still damp. It's kicking up spray. So while it's not actively raining for the time being, the track is still wet. But it can clear up very quickly, especially when you have 20 drivers all out there who are going to want to get a banker lap straight in the bag.
Well, that was the message that they were just giving McLaren there, wasn't it? It could be that the very fastest time for this racetrack is the first flying lap. So they're all out there now, coming out the pits, doing an out lap. That's where they're sort of just learning about the circuit. They're on their way around. The drivers are literally looking at the things like the curbs, trying to find out where there's standing water, trying to figure out where there's grip and where there isn't grip. Do the curbs have any grip in them, or are they just completely slippery? Do you need to stay away from them? Can you get the tyres and brake temperatures into any sort of window that represents performance? That's on this out lap, and then you've just got to go for it. You can only do that on this out lap because the next lap around could be a one shot.
As Lando Norris might well find out as he brakes for the bus stop chicane, one of the slowest corners on the track, chucks it right, then left, takes a slightly wider line out of the final corner to get his foot down as he heads towards La Source. Turn 1, the right-hander, U-shaped bend, takes a slightly wider line. Here's what he's saying on the radio.
Rain expected in just over 2 minutes' time.
Will Joseph, his engineer, telling him when the rain is coming, so that should be just enough time to get one lap before potential more rain comes. He makes his way past Carlos Sainz, up through Eau Rouge, over the hill at Radion, and then towards the right-hand kink that leads you onto the Kemmel Straight. This the longest lap of the year and the opening gambit for Lando Norris. But you do want to have a reasonable amount of space between you and the next car, not only for time, but for visibility as well, Mark.
Visibility is terrible here. Not so much of an issue in qualifying as it will be in the race, of course, but we expect the race to be dry. But in the first part of qualifying, when you have got all 20 cars on the track at the same time, as Lando tiptoes his way around, opposite lock on the steering wheel, just trying to keep the car in the straight line. In the first part of qualifying, when the track will get busy, that visibility could well become an issue as everyone, particularly at the end of the lap, starts to bunch their way up. Another massive handful of opposite lock for Lando Norris. He's just desperately trying to tiptoe his way around this track without swapping ends.
If these are going to be indeed crucial laps, if we're going to get some more rain coming down, well, Lando Norris was fastest in the first sector on this lap before that was taken away by Tsunoda. Then Verstappen took it away from him. So it's getting quicker every time. Will it be a last man over the line situation? It's still early stages, but with more rain on the way, these could be crucial. Hamilton is saying on the radio there is no grip out there as we wait to see Lando Norris makes his way through Blanchimont, not quite flat out through the left-hander in these conditions, into the braking zone for the bus stop chicane. Turns 18 and 19. The pit lane entry, you carry on round. He keeps it on the track. He'll have a Red Bull of Verstappen in front of him, who gears up for his first proper lap, but across the line for Lando Norris, it's a 1:58.894.
And of course the purpose of this first session is just to get through inside the top 15. That'll get you through into Q2, the second part of qualifying. What could well happen here, if there is rain on the way, it's not raining right now, the track's very, very wet, there's no rain falling. this could be the quickest time, and actually it's going to get quicker and quicker and quicker up until the point that the rain does start falling, at which point it then gets slower and slower and slower. 20 cars on track right now on the intermediate tyres are dispelling all of that water. They're throwing it up into the air. They're creating at least something of a drier line. The guys that go out just before the rain comes down could get the best of these conditions.
Talk about going quickly. Piastri goes fastest with a 1:57.4, well ahead of the curve as Fernando Alonso slots into second on a 1:58.2. But Max Verstappen on his first attempt going fastest of anybody in the first sector. The man with one pole to his name around this very circuit makes his way through the double left-hander of Pouon, coming into the slightly more technical chicane, coming through Fagna, slightly through the right-hander, tentative on the steering wheel, tentative on the throttle as well for Max Verstappen, trying to carry the speed and momentum through whilst not making any mistakes on the braking, because round here you are punished. The gravel traps are not far away.
Yeah, and one of the challenges that maybe Lando Norris might have here is that, as you said, it's a very long lap here, so you can't just do one flying lap followed by another flying lap. You need to have some time to charge up the hybrid system on these cars, so you need a slow down lap before you then go again. The length of that long slow down lap, having Lando done his first lap first of anybody, could mean that it pushes his second flying lap into the conditions as they begin to worsen when rain starts to fall, because Lando Norris already down in 10th position.
And Verstappen, who has now got to the top of the timings, cleared by 1.4 seconds. Verstappen a 1:56.0 ahead of Piastri. Then comes Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, who's just come across the line. So Verstappen, who found 1.4 seconds ahead of Piastri, he's 2 seconds ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. Sainz can only manage 9th. We haven't quite seen yet what the two Mercedes have got. Lewis Hamilton was on the radio saying there was absolutely no grip. This is him across the line. What has he got for us? It's third place at the moment in these early stages of Q1, with teammate George Russell coming through the mist and the spray that absolutely clouds that Mercedes on the main straight, enough for 5th fastest.
So how accurate was McLaren's weather forecast? They said rain coming in 2 minutes. Lando Norris has now started a second flying lap, having done a cool-down lap. It's a decent first sector, and at the moment I think he's going to be okay, because the rain still doesn't seem to be coming down, so he's still getting some reasonable conditions, and he should, if he continues at the current pace, and he's now down in 16th, by the way, in the drop zone as things stand, 17th now. He's got to finish this lap in a strong position without making any mistakes to guarantee his place up into the top 15.
Yeah, in that drop zone at the moment is Hülkenberg, Norris, Joe, Stroll and Bottas, but everybody who is going out there again pretty much going quicker. Lando Norris, personal best from him in sector 1, but finding it tough to match what Max Verstappen has done. Ocon in the Alpine has put himself up into 4th. Teammate Pierre Gasly is also up there in 2nd, 7/10 behind Verstappen. That is the gap at the moment between P1 and P2 in these early stages. It's a long track, so the margins are going to be bigger than what you perhaps would see in an Austria or a Monaco, but these are chunky gaps as well. Let's just follow Lando Norris through the bus stop chicane and see what he's got on his second timed lap around. He'll have Perez in front of him as Perez sets off down to La Source, but Lando Norris across the line does improve up to 4th fastest, just behind his teammate Piastri.
Yeah, so that should secure his position. We've still got a fair amount of time, 9 minutes to go, but if that rain does indeed come, we may have seen the best of these conditions now. So the guys at risk now are the likes of Daniel Ricciardo, Yuki Tsunoda on the bubble there, Fernando Alonso, who would expect to excel in these conditions down 11th. We want more from all of those guys.
It is raining a little bit now, guys. It was dry at the start of the session. The rain is starting to fall. I'm looking out towards the source, and the fans are starting to put some ponchos on. It's not too heavy at the moment, but of course we've had so much rain already today that it will just be adding to the puddles that are already out there. We had street cleaners out on the track as well, so who knows, this could be a lengthy bit of rain, but at the moment it's not too heavy.
And the track, of course, was resurfaced not too long ago. The entirety of the track from Blanchimont through to Eau Rouge and the Kemmel Straight through to Brussels has been resurfaced. And of course, when it's resurfaced, it can be a little bit more grippier in the dry, but suddenly that can become very slippery as well when you get conditions like this, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. It holds the water. The water tends to sit on the surface, so you get more pools of sort of standing water. So yeah, definite challenge. And of course, because it's new, everyone's finding where the grip is and where it isn't. And it's these laps that every single lap is a huge learning curve for everybody. Sergio Perez is on a lap down in P11 at the moment, needs to do better, and so far is. So middle sector's been faster than anybody. Closing out the last part of the lap now, we'll get to find out where he sits. He's safe, but I think we could see a little bit more from him.
Yeah, just over 8 minutes remain. Perez fastest of anybody in the middle sector. The two RBs currently find themselves down in 16th and 17th, but they're both going quicker.
This is now or never for a new set. We think we should take a new set.
Okay. Box that.
As Lando Norris boxes for a new set of tyres, they're going to risk it. Sonoda goes up to 5th. Perez went up to 2nd. Ricciardo was on a decent lap, and Ricciardo slotted up into 2nd. A 1:56.6 for Daniel Ricciardo. Impressive lap.
And that is exactly why Lando Norris needs to take a brand new set of tyres now, because he's down in P10, but others around him are starting to go a little bit quicker. If he puts a new set of tyres on now, he might get the benefit of those before we get the heaviest of this rain. There might be one shot, as his engineer just told him, to find his way further up the order, because P11, which is what he's on now, having got those new tyres on an out lap, is too risky to sit tight on.
Yeah, Leclerc has just slotted up into 2nd as well, so time's improving. Piastri goes fastest by almost half a second, a 1:55.5 from the most recent Grand Prix winner in Formula One. Zhou Guanyu, that's the sound you're hearing now, the Sauber driver. He improves, but only enough for 14th. I'll tell you what though, behind him is Fernando Alonso, who's on an out lap at the moment, needs to find time. So too does Kevin Magnussen at the moment. If it ended like this, Magnussen would be out, along with Alex Albon, Nico Hülkenberg, Logan Sargent and Lance Stroll. They are all very much in danger of being eliminated in the next 6.5 minutes. They're all out on track at the moment, going for another lap to try and improve their times. As Valtteri Bottas comes into the pit, Lando Norris did come into the pits for some new tyres, and he is now back out. So we'll see what Norris has got with a fresh set of intermediates.
Yeah, so around half the field now on an out lap, having done exactly what Lando Norris has done and been into the pits, changed their tyres. They're all on the intermediates. They're all working their way around. It's a very, very busy racetrack. I think everybody, bar Valtteri Bottas, is out on track right now. 19 cars, all looking for a little bit of gap, a little bit of space before the predicted rain starts to fall. This is everybody's last opportunity with 5.5 minutes on the clock to go for it. So Lando Norris, I think, and Esteban Ocon will be two of the first to start their flying laps on the fresh tyres.
Sound of Carlos Sainz getting up to just over 300 kilometres an hour. Foot planted through the left-hand kink of Blanchimont before the 100-metre braking board comes at you for the bus stop chicane. Down through the gears, through the right, then the left-hander. Steady on the throttle, 3rd gear, then up into 4th for Carlos Sainz, who qualified on pole position here after inheriting it from Max Verstappen back in 2022. This time around, with 5 minutes left on the clock of Q1, Sainz across the line, 4th fastest. Still a bit of a gap though between himself and teammate Charles Leclerc, who's a few tenths ahead of him in 3rd.
Yeah, and Lando Norris needs to deliver. He's just started his flying lap, but Esteban Ocon behind him has set the fastest first sector of anybody. Fernando Alonso's going quickly. Alex Albon is going quickly. The circuit is ramping up as more and more water's dispersed by all of these cars tearing around on the intermediate tyres. We haven't got enough rainfall at the moment to start deteriorating conditions, and so people are going quickly. Lando Norris has done a decent first sector, and of course he only needs to get safely into the top 15, but Esteban Ocon is the man to watch at the moment in that Alpine, down in P13 right now.
Ocon is absolutely flying. His first sector was a 32.2, whereas Norris was a 32.7. So Norris does need to find more time here, as Ocon now just coming to the end of the middle sector. What's he managed to do? A 53.1, and we'll see what Norris has in a few moments' time. Norris going better in the middle sector than he did in the first first sector, but time's improving with less than 4 minutes to go. The two Aston Martins out on track trying to improve their plight. Alonso gets up into 4th spot. Verstappen fastest, the 1:54.9 ahead of Piastri, Hamilton, Alonso, Leclerc, the top 5. Then it's Sainz. Stroll has got his Aston Martin up into 8th because Gasly has just put his Alpine up into a magnificent 3rd. But time's improving all the time. Albon finding time, but Norris is key here. He's just come through the middle sector and is trying to finish off this lap and get himself away from that elimination zone.
Yeah, and he needs to here because he's in P16 now, currently being knocked out, but he is on a good lap, a lap that's definitely good enough to bump himself right up the order. He needs to get through the final couple of corners without mistakes. He heads out towards the line through the final chicane and back along the straight, and he'll cross the line, and that should see Lando Norris jump all the way up, and it does, up to P5.
Yeah, Albon just got up into 8th ahead of him as Norris to the line indeed, P5. But still, not as quick as his teammate Oscar Piastri. So Lando Norris in these conditions, not quite finding harmony in these early stages, but George Russell is now in that elimination zone and he needs to find a blistering final lap. He's on an out lap at the moment. He'll have enough time to do one final lap, but it's cutting it close. Yuki Tsunoda is on the bubble. Sargent is 16th. Then it's Russell, Bottas and Joe with Nico Hülkenberg down in 20th and last, but they're all out there and vying to go again. Sergio Perez has fallen all the way down to 13th, so he needs to be careful here. He's going to have to go again. He's on an out lap as well. So all is not yet done with just over 2 minutes left on the clock here in Q1 for the Belgian Grand Prix.
Yeah, and I think half the field, certainly the back half of the field, having to opt to take another set of tyres here to try and make use of these conditions just in case they do deteriorate. George Russell just starts his flying lap now. We could see the order change dramatically with the guys that are on their out laps starting their laps now with just under 2 minutes left. George Russell already going very, very quickly in the first sector. It's a sign that the circuit still has speed in it. That Mercedes should work well in these conditions. We saw it do just that at Silverstone. Can George Russell deliver a shock to the rest of the field and get himself all the way up the order? But it could well be a sign that there's still enough pace in the circuit that those around the midfield, certainly like Sergio Perez, could well be in trouble here.
Russell making his way through the spray at the end of the Kemmel Straight, has a best qualifying here of 2nd back in 2021 during his Williams days. And of course that race, or well, it wasn't really quite a race with a lap under the safety car, but it was still enough to see him take his first podium in his Grand Prix career. Now back in Spa for Mercedes, makes his way through the left-hander, what was the corner with no name, now renamed with after the legendary Formula 1 driver Jackie Ickx. Next up, it's the double left-hander of Pouon, gets out of the way, the Red Bull in front of him, nice and clean from George Russell. Sector 1 is looking okay for Russell, it's a 32.3, which is enough at the moment, but and he is the only one going quick in that bottom 5 elimination zone, but Bottas only just beginning his final lap. Hulkenberg's had a so-so first sector. Tsunoda will get one final lap. Indeed, Tsunoda is cutting it fine to get a lap in. He will be one of the last over the line. It might actually go to Logan Sargent. Russell through Blanchimont, planted through the left-hander. That heavy rain we were being promised hasn't quite come down just yet, but the track's still tricky in these slippery mixed conditions. Leclerc pops himself up into 2nd. Russell getting a little bit impeded though by the Sauber coming out of the final corner. Is that going to cost him a lot of time? He still finds a huge heat up to 3rd. A 1:55.3, 4/10 off. George Russell up to 3rd. That puts Tsunoda, Sargent, Bottas, Joe and Hulkenberg all at risk.
Yeah, and there is still pace in the circuit. I think George Russell has an argument to say he definitely was impeded coming out of that final chicane. It hasn't really cost him because he's still going to make it through, I'm absolutely no doubt.
Hello.
If you thought you hadn't heard enough foul language from Max Verstappen last weekend, here he is again, 2nd episode. Getting frustrated with the back marker, and it is, I think, under investigation. Is it, Joe?
Yeah, Joe Guan Yu coming through Blanchimont, and that is under investigation for impeding. So we'll see how that happens. Joe currently down in 19th, Verstappen up in 2nd, so I'm not sure if anything will really come of that. Bottas has found a huge heap of time on Magnussen. Gasly puts his Alpine up into 2nd. Piastri takes the checkered flag, currently fastest. Hulkenberg going well 2. Perez is on the brink as Ocon goes up into the 6th. Perez finding time in the middle sector though. Hulkenberg across the line. He's up into 11th, just ahead of Carlos Sainz, who's also out there and had a decent middle sector. Alonso up into 7th. The checkered flag is out. These will be the final lap times. Huge lap from Valtteri Bottas in the Sauber up to 8th spot. That puts Ricciardo down to 15th. Perez is 16th and looking at another Q1 elimination in what could be his final weekend as a Red Bull driver, coming under increasing scrutiny. Will he make it out? Yes, he does. Up into 4th spot for Perez. He needed to do it and he did it when it counted. Perez up to 4th. Ricciardo gets himself up into 8th spot. Right, the RB driver been flying so far this weekend, but what about Carlos Sainz? He's down in 17th. Scratch that. He's up to 5th. Safely through for Carlos Sainz. Yuki Tsunoda won't be able to improve. He starts, well, plumb last after a 60-place grid penalty, but he's 18th on the road, and that will be that. Nobody else going quicker. Lewis Hamilton was knocked all the way down to 13th at one stage, but he is safely through. Out at the end of Q1 then is the 2 Haas drivers of Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, the RB of Yuki Tsunoda in 18th, the Williams of Logan Sargent in 19th, and Joe Guan Yu in the Sauber 20th and last.
Yeah, so decent job from Sergio Perez in the end. The pressure really was on from that last lap. He left it very, very late, but he did deliver, as did Carlos Sainz in the very last seconds. Esteban Ocon with a really good, strong set of laps. It wasn't just one lap from Ocon. He had a lot of good laps, actually, that put him up into P8. And I think a big shout out to Daniel Ricciardo as well, who has well out-qualified his teammate Tsunoda. Of course, Tsunoda will have a lot of eyes looking towards the race. He was going to start the race last anyway, so that car will be very much set up for racing conditions as opposed to qualifying. That might explain some of it. But yeah, I think there was a number of good drives there in some really difficult conditions.
Yeah, that one already. We compromised ourselves too much.
Sergio Perez there, who made it through, but he needed to put one final lap on the board. It was enough to slot in just behind his teammate Verstappen, so he did it when it counted, but not too happy clearly with the preparations heading into that Q1. But Rosanna, well, that all got a bit fiery towards the end, but well, the 2 Haas drivers I think will be most disappointed with that, behind their immediate rivals 16th and 17th.
Yeah, not a great session for Haas, but I have to say a standout for me is Lance Stroll in that, making it through to Q2, finishing 15th on the road in that part of qualifying, and that was after, of course, his smash in FP3. The Aston Martin team working hard over the lunch break, changing a PU as precaution, so his power unit's been changed, gearbox, front left corner and front wing, so they did a great job getting him ready in time for qualifying, and then to get through into the second part of qualifying. He's going to feel pretty lucky. What can he do in this next part of qualifying? And also a bit of a shout out for Alex Albon as well. Thought that the car would go well around this track. We said that in past years, but of course it's a bit of a different car in 2024. So again, one to watch for Q2. How far can he advance up the grid?
So that was Sargent on the radio there. We're just seeing a few replays. Sargent, I think, was on a fast lap, but locked up going into La Source. That ran him deep, and then the Red Bull cut right in front of him, and that was Sargent's lap compromised from the beginning. But a mistake by Sargent there, but at the end of the day, that Red Bull would have passed him, I imagine, during the lap anyway. But Sargent all the way down in 19th in what could well also be his final qualifying as a Grand Prix driver. The American under increased scrutiny once again for his Williams seat. But both Haas cars then eliminated in Q1. That's the first time that's happened since Monaco last year, with both of them eliminated. Normally Hulkenberg is able to find every single bit of pace out of that Haas car. Tsunoda eliminated as well. Hasn't really been a match for his teammate Ricciardo so far this weekend, but Tsunoda was always destined for the back of the grid with his engine penalties. And Joe, the slowest qualifier for the 8th time this season. So another man trying to put himself in the shop window. Not really the way to do it for Joe Guan Yu, unfortunately. But we move on to the next part of qualifying. And you know what is also a standout for me, Mark, in that session? Valtteri Bottas getting that Sauber. He finished 11th. He had a good qualifying last time out. The man's a good driver, fighting for his seat. Can you believe that?
Yeah, it was a good lap, and he is actually putting in a few good performances, isn't he? He's a man that's sort of fighting for his Formula One career at this point. He hasn't got a confirmed drive for next year. There is still one of those two seats at what is currently Sauber and what will eventually sort of change into Audi. We know that Nico Hülkenberg will go there, that's confirmed. The second seat, long since been touted as being there available for Carlos Sainz if he wants it, but he's been hesitant in taking it, so that's a seat that's still available. It could well be that Valtteri Bottas ends up, remaining where he is and partnering Hülkenberg. So we'll see, but he's doing himself no end of good in terms of these run of good performances he's putting in at the moment.
Yeah, let's see if that can continue into Q2 as they begin to head out to the end of the pit lane as we await for the next 15 minutes of qualifying action. But ahead of all that, can we get a weather update, Rosanna? What's it looking like?
You certainly can. It is pretty gloomy here in the Ardennes Forest, but actually at the moment no rain falling, so long may that last, mainly just for my footwear's sake, but who knows? It can all change because that's what it's like here in Spa-Francorchamps. And talking of Valtteri Bottas's performances, I just love his acting performances on Instagram. If you haven't seen his latest instalments, just check it out after qualifying. But yes, who knows where the Finnish driver will end up. We've got cars out on track. Q2's underway, Harry.
It certainly is. Thank you, Rosanna. Yes, that weather then holding off for now. Still on intermediate tyres, though, so the track not quite dry enough yet. And straight out are the two Alpines, Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. They seem to be coming alive in these mixed conditions.
Yeah, Ocon particularly looked very, very good in that first part of qualifying, putting a series of really, really strong laps. So this is what happens in conditions like this. It can swing so much that it actually swings in and out of favour of different types of cars, different types of driving styles and drivers, of course. So the form guide is sort of all over the place in sessions like this, which I guess for us is great.
Class 1 rain in 10 minutes. That's from Will Joseph to Lando Norris on the team radio. So it's Class 2, wasn't it, ahead of Q1? And now it's Class 1 ahead of Q2. So we're going to need a lesson from McLaren about their class system in rain and their radar, because we haven't seen any actual rain come down yet.
Well, that is the difficulty of weather prediction in Spa. It's famously difficult to call it because it's spread over such a large area, so the weather can come in at one part of the circuit but completely be unaffected on the other side. It can come in very quickly with almost no notice over the top of the mountains, and we used to send our own weather team up into the hills in a van that was loaded up with all sorts of incredible satellite equipment and radar equipment, so that we'd get the most accurate weather predictions back in real time back to the pit wall. But even then, they would tell us there's a weather pattern coming in 30 seconds time, and it would just veer off and miss us. You can't get it right all of the time, so that's one of the challenges of this place.
And that's why everybody loves coming back to it. Been on the official Grand Prix calendar since 1950. We're not actually in Spa, but we're in the town of Francorchamps in the Belgian Ardennes countryside, surrounded by trees and forestry, which is one of the reasons for that wet weather also remaining and lingering, but the reason why it can change in an instant as well. We're in eastern Belgium, just on the border of Germany and Netherlands, or not too far away from it. Verstappen on the radio, he's half Belgian.
A little bit, right? Tiny bit. I think it's very, very fine drizzle, mate.
Very, very fine drizzle. I'd call that Class 1 rain.
Well, we'll see. Maybe they've got different class systems between Red Bull and McLaren.
Yeah, Red Bull have light drizzle, medium, heavy rain, whereas McLaren Class 1 to 3. That's what it is. George Russell, though, embarking on his first flying lap. I tell you what, up through Eau Rouge and into Radion, there's a little bit of a dry line developing.
Well, it will develop because of the cars churning up so much water. These intermediate tyres disperse a lot of water. They're very, very effective at displacing water that's sitting on the surface. And it doesn't take very long for 20 of those Formula One cars to do that, for that to really start to change. If there is drizzle in the air and it's just coming down lightly, it'll be difficult to create the full dry line. But the temperature being generated is such that it will start to do that. So unless we get any sort of significant rain falling, we could well start to see a switch of tyres perhaps by the end of this session. The problem is, as we said earlier, it could be dry in one part, completely wet in another part of the track.
Well, according to Verstappen, it's raining a bit, but enough to change things on track. Rosanna, what's your radar system telling you? Are you a class girl or something else?
I'm a classy girl, Harry. Whenever you talk about the Class 1 and Class 2, all I can think of is national insurance contributions. No, I would say it's raining a lot in the paddock. About 30 seconds ago, if you'd come to me, I'd have said it's not at all. But it is changing so quickly. It is really raining now. I would describe it as feathery. Very, very fine rain, but it is coming down properly and consistently now.
Okay, thank you very much. A feathery rain update from Rosanna Tennant down in the pits. Lando Norris, fastest of anybody in the middle sector. George Russell tends to be making his way out of the bus stop chicane for his first lap time across the board. It's a 1:54.9. It's good enough for third fastest. Alex Albon is actually quickest of anybody, a 1:54.7 so far for him. Just over half a tenth of a second split him and Esteban Ocon on the Alpine, who is second. Then it's Russell and Gasly, the 4 lap times that have been set so far. But Lando Norris is flying through the middle sector out of the final corner. The rain is coming down in that final part of the circuit and onto the start-finish straight. He finds time, 2.5 tenths clear of Albon, a 1:54.4 for Lando Norris to go fastest with 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, good lap from Norris, but this is about who's going to be on track at the time when the grip level's at its peak, and that could be any time between now and the next 10 minutes. The rain is falling, as you heard Rosanna say, but it just depends what level of intensity and how much of the circuit's affected by it. We're going to start to see now, because people are still going quickly, but there'll be a switchover point where we suddenly stop getting faster lap times and we start getting people struggling to stay on the racetrack. If you're not getting your lap time in before we get to that crossover point, you're in trouble.
Russell has just said on the radio his rears are all over the place. He's already been knocked down to 9th, 10th fastest now. Verstappen is flying in the middle sector. Talk about trying to find the time on the track. He is doing it in leaps and bounds. Goes fastest by 6/10 of a second. A 1:53.8 for the man who has a 10-place grid penalty. If he stays in that P1 position come the end of Q3, he will start just outside the top 10 in 11th spot. And even on that quick lap, he had a bit of a moment coming through Stabilo, through the first of the right-handers. There's a little bit of green Astro runoff, and then there's the gravel. He just lost the rear slightly, but from inside the car didn't look too much like a big deal, but from outside the car certainly looked like a rather big wobble from Verstappen.
Yeah, the curbs and the AstroTurf, the painted sections outside of the racetrack are the ones that tend to hold the water and tend to be, even more slippery than the track itself. So we've got pretty much now a lull where everyone's done their first opening gambit, everyone's done their first flying laps. It looks like they're all going to start to either come into the pits or, there's a few now coming into the pits, maybe a fresh set of intermediate tyres. At least they need to have a little cool-down lap, recharge batteries, get temperatures under control and go again. Esteban Ocon will be the first man to start going again, setting a competitive lap, and once again he's lighting up the timesheets purple.
Less than 8 minutes to go. Verstappen fastest ahead of Norris. Then it's Albon, Piastri, Ocon the top 5, Perez, Ricciardo, Alonso is 8th ahead of Hamilton. Sainz the top 10. And if it ends like this, we say goodbye to George Russell, Pierre Gasly, Charles Leclerc, Valtteri Bottas and Lance Stroll. The 15 remaining drivers, but we've still got 7.5 minutes left. People fitting fresh intermediate tyres with a little bit of rain coming down in that pit lane. It is a race to find yourself a nice bit of track space and set your final flyers in this second part of qualifying.
It is exactly that. It's a race, and everyone really treating it as such, desperate to get back out of the pit lane with fresh tyres on and back onto the circuit before we lose the best of these conditions. At the moment, just looking at Esteban Ocon's time, so he's a little bit ahead of everybody else and out of sequence. He did the fastest first sector of anybody. The middle sector, though, is much, much slower. We haven't seen if he made a mistake or whether it's just the circuit itself giving up grip, whether that's a wetter part of the racetrack. He went very quickly early on. The latter part of the lap now not delivering anything like the performance the start of the lap delivered.
Yeah, Gasly similar as well in the first and second sectors. Just gone through the second sector, 52.0 for Gasly. Ocon was actually a 53.0, so Ocon had a miserable middle sector compared to Pierre Gasly. So I wonder if Ocon maybe even made a mistake, losing a second to his teammate. Ocon's currently 5th, while Gasly is down in 12th, trying to find time. Sainz is the man on the bubble as Perez reports on the radio. It is raining harder now. Out of the final corner for Gasly, almost losing the rear end of that Alpine as he applies the throttle. He hasn't found time. He's stayed in 12th. Have we lost the best of the track conditions?
I think that's exactly what's happened. We've lost the best of it. Certainly in the second and third sectors particularly, I don't think there's anything left from this racetrack. We might still see the likes of Alonso, who's on a reasonable lap, jump up the order a little bit. His middle sector's not great, but we might see an improvement from him, but nobody else really making too much of an improvement.
Russell, Gasly, Leclerc, Bottas, Stroll, they are all in the elimination zone at the moment. Russell has just started a lap. I tell you what, it started well for Russell. Alonso finds time in the first sector, but not overall. He stays down in 8th. Russell needs to find a way through here. George Russell currently down in 11th spot, making his way down the Kemmel straight now for the man who was, found himself out in Q1 this time last week in Hungary, looking at being eliminated in Q2 this weekend before we head to the summer break. He's had a good first sector though, fastest of anybody, but we've seen cars able to improve in that first sector. It's the middle and the final sector where people are losing time. Perez comes into the pits.
Oh, massive slide from Russell. Huge, big hold of handfuls of opposite lock. There is zero grip through the middle part of this sector. That is where it's wettest. 5 minutes to go, the rain's coming down. It's going to be Russell who's in trouble, but also Charles Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc as well, down in 13th. Leclerc is out there. He's finding time, but not as much as Russell. Russell is actually holding this together fairly well in that middle sector, but that is where the rain is coming down hard. He's got to get every braking point right. One small mistake, Russell is off into the gravel, but at the moment, he is keeping it neat and tidy and has actually found time. He's up on Carlos Sainz in the middle sector. Ferrari could be looking at a double elimination in Q2 if they are not careful, because Sainz is out there on a lap, but it's not going particularly well. Leclerc's doing okay. Russell is doing better than both of them. Coming in to the bus stop chicane now. Hamilton is only a little bit up the road in 9th. 4 minutes left to go in this Q2 session. Russell currently down in 11th. He does improve, loses time in that final sector, but overall it's enough to get him up to 4th as Verstappen managed to improve. 1:53.8 to increase his gap at the top of the field. Hamilton losing a chunk of time, almost a second off Verstappen in the middle sector. Sainz not finding time in the first sector. He is looking in real danger. Leclerc is finding time now in that middle sector.
Yeah, so Lewis Hamilton coming through the last part of the lap now. It's not the best lap, but it is an improvement on what he's done so far, and he needs this because he's currently right on the bubble in P10 as he comes through the final chicane. Foot to the floor, across the line he goes, and Hamilton does jump up to P5. So now all eyes on Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Can he do something? Because he is now P12 as he heads towards the line.
His teammate Charles Leclerc was able to improve up into 3rd spot. Sainz makes his way through the bus stop chicane, clouts the curb on the right, slings the Ferrari into the left, on the throttle, up through the gears. He finds time up to 4th, but that puts Perez down into 10th. He is right on the bubble, and Perez is out there at the moment. Will get time for another lap. Perez needs to go again. Ricciardo's down at 11th. Alonso 12th. Gasly 13th. Bottas 14th. Stroll is 15th. Piastri's only 8th.
And Ricciardo is going quickly. So Ricciardo is in P11, the first of those to be eliminated at the moment, but going quicker than he's done before. So he might be able to find himself into safety, which would then bump Sergio Perez down into the drop zone. Perez has done it again, hasn't he? He's put himself under massive pressure in the closing moments of this session where he has to deliver.
He's just not able to even get on a par with Max Verstappen right now, who has a 6/10 gap at the front of the field between himself with a 1:53.8, and actually Piastri just slashed that right down by half. 0.3 of a second now. Piastri puts that McLaren up into 2nd. Okay, so there is still time out there now. We can still improve. That middle sector is tricky. Ricciardo, who is 0.9 of a second away from getting himself through and up into the top 10. Decent first sector, okay middle sector, should be good enough to get himself up into the top 10. It is good enough. The Aussie puts himself in 6th, ahead of Albon in 7th. Then it's the 2 Mercedes of Russell and Hamilton, 8th and 9th. Ocon is on the bubble in 10th and just embarking on what might be his final flyer. Then it's Sergio Perez who is in the middle sector, and it's not going particularly well. Alonso's out there on an out lap. Gasly starting a lap. Bottas in the middle of a lap. So too is Lance Stroll.
Yeah, so Perez needs a good final sector. His first sector wasn't great at all. The middle sector he's managed to recover some time, and he is going quick. He's making an improvement. So let's see how he goes as he enters the final sector of the lap now. But he needs to deliver something, because those even behind him, Lance Stroll, Pierre Gasly, all going quicker. So Perez under some serious pressure here.
Yeah, and the Alpines have actually been doing very well in these mixed conditions. Ocon right on the limit though in 10th, whereas Gasly is down in 13th. But Sergio Perez, who has not had a top 6 finish in a race in the last 8 races, and of course had to have another recovery drive from well down the field last time out in Hungary, needs to be on par with Max Verstappen. Right now he's not able to do that. Right now he's looking set for elimination, but round the final corner has found time in the middle sector. Can Perez get that Red Bull up into the top 10? Yes, he can. The Mexican moves up to 4th, just behind Norris and ahead of Leclerc, but the gap to his teammate is still 6/10 of a second. That puts Ocon down into 11th, but Ocon is fastest of anybody in the first sector. Russell and Hamilton are only 9th and 10th. Stroll up through the gears, up into 5th, across the line for Stroll. He does improve, but not his position, stays in 15th. He won't get another go at it. Ocon flying out there. Gasly not far behind him either.
Yeah, and Hamilton has had to rescue what was a really disappointing first sector with a middle sector which does look better. This could be enough from Hamilton, but at the moment Hamilton now in the drop zone as Ocon leaps his way up to P4. The two Mercedes right on the cusp and have to deliver something quite extraordinary now. Russell on a really good lap. I think that will get him to safety. Lewis Hamilton, though, under major pressure behind him.
The two Alpines really hounding for positions in the top 10. Ocon up to 4th, Gasly up to 7th. That puts the two Mercedes on the back foot. 9 thousandths of a second split Russell from the top 10, and only a couple of thousandths back to Hamilton, but Hamilton is fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Russell crosses the line, gets himself up into 2nd. Hamilton should be okay then to get himself through up into the top 10. He's just making his way through Blanchimont now. The checkered flag is out. The rain is still coming down slightly in that final sector, but then into the braking zone of the bus stop chicane, through the left-hander that finishes off this all over 7-kilometre lap across the line for Lewis Hamilton. It's 2nd fastest. The Mercedes rescue it in the final stages. That puts Ricciardo down into 11th, and Carlos Sainz is looking at elimination here if he can't save it, because Fernando Alonso has just put himself up into 5th. Charles Leclerc is also on the bubble. Gasly, from what was elation, is now knocked out. Time's changing right to the bitter end. Leclerc up into 5th, fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Perez is still once again very much in trouble here. Sainz gets himself up into 4th. Perez will just be safe, but only just, ending 10th fastest. And in those final seconds, a turnaround for Mercedes and Ferrari to get both drivers into the top 10. And in the end, those who fall at the 2nd hurdle in qualifying are Alex Albon in the Williams, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, Daniel Ricciardo in the RB, Bottas in the Sauber, Stroll in the Aston Martin.
Do you know, there was enough pace in Daniel Ricciardo's car, I'm convinced of it, to get himself inside the top 10, but they timed it all wrong. They ended up in the pits at the closing moments of that session when everyone else was going more quickly. So it feels like they got that slightly out of sync with everybody else. Sergio Perez scraping through once again. He does get through, though, and I guess that's all that matters.
It is, but I'll tell you what's ominous is the gap to Max Verstappen. If it wasn't for the 10-place grid penalty that will come Verstappen's way, Verstappen has had the edge all weekend long.
Well, even with a 10-place grid penalty, could Verstappen out-qualify his teammate? Well, he won't quite, will he? But it could be next to each other on the grid here at this rate.
And wouldn't that tell you everything? And you know, if they were on the edge of whether they keep Perez or not, well, that might solve it. And you have to feel frustrated for that man as well, Pierre Gasly. From what at one moment the checkered flag was out, both Alpines were up in the top 10, but then in literally seconds, both Ferraris went up there, managed to improve, and Gasly ended up 12th. His teammate through up in 9th.
You know, those are the most tense and difficult moments for the teams and the drivers, because it's all about being in the right place at the right time, and that's such a difficult thing to engineer when the conditions are changing so much, when the track's so busy, trying to find the right gap and making sure the driver delivers without a mistake in such tricky conditions under pressure. It's all such a difficult thing to deliver. So even those guys like the Ferraris that only delivered at the very final moment, it might feel like it's a close call, but actually, you know, they got it just about right, and that's all you have to do. You just got to get through.
I think Ricciardo will be really frustrated with that final lap. Albon ended 11th.
I can see it from here. We're just not quite there with car pace. Really well done in those conditions. We're not missing much.
0.003 of a second between Albon and Perez for Albon to get a top 10 appearance. He will start in the top 10 when Verstappen's penalty is applied, regardless of where Verstappen qualifies come the end of Q3. So a top 10 start for the Williams driver, but that's encouraging in these conditions, which, well, is it? Because these conditions, do they tell the full story in terms of full car performance? Because there is that saying, you know, rain is the great leveler. Well, Perez first.
Yeah, come on, man, let's improve our run plan.
Yeah, so Perez there just saying, let's improve our run plan. In a similar sort of scenario to the one I just described with Daniel Ricciardo, he didn't end up on the circuit at the right time. In the very closing moments, Perez also was in the pits. So that's more of a team issue than it is a driver issue. It's about trying to predict it. It's a very difficult thing, as I said, to get right, but that's what you have to do in Formula One terms.
Is rain the great leveler?
Well, it is the great leveler, and the reason they might, you know, feel a little bit hard done by is it's a great opportunity, isn't it? When you haven't got the quickest car, and that's what you're talking about there in terms of leveling performance, it enables the driver to bring something that might just give you the edge, and when others are making mistakes and getting just the tiniest bit wrong, you get it right, you can catapult yourself up the grid by 4, 5, 6 places.
Just seeing a replay of Pierre Gasly making his way through La Source, which seemed all right. Went maybe a little bit deep, but didn't look like it was too much of an issue for him. Gasly ended down in 12th place, just behind Alex Albon. Ricciardo then 13th, ahead of Bottas 14th, and Lance Stroll with a heavily rebuilt Aston Martin down in 15th. Through then into Q3, both Red Bulls, both Mercedes, both Ferraris, both McLarens, and then one Alpine, Rosanna, and one Aston Martin.
Yes. Don't know, were you expecting that? Sort of.
Well, Alonso in the wet, I think you can never rule him out, can you?
I think so.
I wasn't expecting
absolutely.
Ocon. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting Ocon. Based on practice yesterday, I wasn't expecting Ocon.
Who would you have put in the top 10 instead of him?
Honestly, Ricardo has been flying.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, disappointment there, and I think because Esteban Ocon's in the top 10, I think Pierre Gasly is going to be very disappointed. Guys, it is still raining in the paddock. It's coming in sideways under the canopy that I'm protecting myself with. It's still very wet, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. These dark grey clouds are really lingering around the circuit. So this top 10 shootout could be very, very interesting.
It certainly could, as the two Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell are the first out in the pit lane, making their way towards the end to wait by the red light. And there is rain falling, as you say, Rosanna, in the pit lane. But crucially, is there rain falling all around the circuit? At one point in Q2, it was drying up slightly, but then getting wetter, particularly in that middle sector as well. We've seen so many cars lose time and then suddenly refinding it in those closing seconds. We can't write how this one is going to end, but we will know that if Max Verstappen does end up on pole position, he won't start there.
Well, it's going to be the two Mercedes, because they're at the front of this queue, a queue of people desperate to get out on track as soon as possible, because, like we've been saying in every one of these qualifying sessions, although it's pouring with rain, this could still be the best of it. Who knows? So when those Mercedes leave the pit lane, they are going to be the first ones to find out which parts of the circuit are wet. If there is anything that's dry, here's Hamilton.
Is it good that I'm ahead of everyone, or
Depends what this rain does.
That's exactly what we were just talking about there, isn't it? You kind of got to be at the front, because if this rain continues to get heavier, the circuit's going to get slower. So being at the front of the queue means that you've got the best opportunity. However, if the rain starts to ease off a little bit, you want other people going in front of you to start clearing any standing water that might be there.
Lewis Hamilton then leads the rest of the field out onto the track. Green light at the end of the pit lane. The man who has 6 pole positions around this circuit, looking for a 7th. And he could well do it. These are the conditions where Lewis Hamilton thrives, but so too does his teammate George Russell, so too do the likes of Fernando Alonso. The wily old fox has snuck his way up into the top 10 in a car that hasn't had outright top 10 pace in the last few rounds. Alonso and Aston Martin searching for answers in their development race off the track. I'll tell you who's not in a rush: Max Verstappen and Red Bull. He's still in the garage.
Yeah, cool, calm and collected. But I guess he knows he's got the pace. You know, he's not desperately chasing something with his car. He's not looking to unlock some performance because he knows he's got that. What he needs now is the right conditions, the right opportunity, and he will go and deliver. He's got everything available to him, the right tools, if you like, in his toolbox. Others are still trying to figure out whether they tweak some settings, whether they've got the right lines going through certain corners. Do they need to tweak wing levels, for example? Verstappen seems comfortable. He seems happy with what he's got underneath him. He just now needs to find the right spot on the racetrack, hopefully in the right conditions, and he'll go and do the rest.
As Verstappen now emerges from the pit lane, which feeds you out on the exit of La Source on the way down to Eau Rouge, and then up through the hill up to Radi on a 35-metre elevation change before you head down that long back straight, the Kemmel Straight, into Les Combes, Malmedy, and then that almost never-ending left-hand bend of Brussels through the corner with no name, now renamed Jackie Hicks, then the double left-hander of Pouon, and then we can catch up to where Lewis Hamilton is just gearing up for his first flyer with 10 minutes on the clock, making his way through the bus stop chicane, setting that car up nicely out of the final corner, up through the gears, foot planted across the line as he embarks down towards La Source. Let's see how he does well in this corner. Nice, neat and tidy from Hamilton, who embarks on his first flyer, Rosanna.
And Lewis Hamilton wasn't sure if being first on the road was a good thing. He was on the radio to the team saying, was it a good thing that he's ahead of everyone? His race engineer, Peter Bollington, saying, depends on what this rain does. So let's all hold our breath and see what the 7-time world champ can do.
Up through Eau Rouge, through Radion, down the Kemmel Straight. His teammate is behind him, just starting the Kemmel Straight now. So Mercedes placing their cars in fairly close proximity on the track. But it's Russell who's quicker in the first sector.
Well, he will get something of a tow. He's quite a long way back, but that Kemmel Straight is so long and so high speed, with the cars having a reasonable amount of downforce on them, that they create such a big wake behind them that actually you may well still see the benefit of a tow. And it's the first sector that Russell has lit up purple and gone quicker in.
Yeah, but Esteban Ocon is just taking it away. And Ocon is flying in that Alpine with a blistering first sector, a 31.8. That Alpine is being set up nicely. They have brought quite a lot of updates this weekend and some circuit-specific updates to that Alpine, and these mixed conditions, seeing them well and truly in the hunt, at least for Esteban Ocon now, who is fastest in the first sector, Hamilton fastest in the middle sector. Let's see what Russell can do as he does, but Russell not as quick in the middle sector compared to Lewis Hamilton. Piastri's going well out there too, but Esteban Ocon carrying pace through the middle sector.
Yeah, it's when you set these cars up, you've got to find a compromise between all three sectors, because the first and third sectors very fast, really you want low downforce, where the middle sector's got lots of sort of tighter and much more corners where you really want the downforce. So Esteban Ocon's car, very, very quick in the first sector, very quick in the third sector, perhaps the middle sector not so much, so you might suggest they've got a low downforce setup, which when it comes to the race tomorrow could well benefit them.
Piastri fastest of anybody in the middle sector, making his way out around the final corner now. He is nearly half a tenth up on Hamilton in the middle sector, but across the line just loses out to Hamilton, but not by much. A 1:54.011 for Hamilton, a 1:54.027 for Piastri. Then comes Russell. Esteban Ocon is enough for fourth fastest, so blisteringly quick in that first sector, but didn't quite have the same pace in the final two sectors. He's displaced by Lando Norris, who gets his McLaren up into fourth, a couple of tenths off his teammate Piastri. This is the sound of Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. He puts himself ahead of Ocon and gets a top 5 with 7 minutes just over that on the board to go for Q3.
And both Red Bulls going quickly, but it is Verstappen who is really setting the timesheets alight. Very, very quick for Verstappen. Perez is going to cross the line ahead of him, and Perez puts it so far quickest of anybody, but Verstappen going even quicker than him. It is Red Bull dominance at this part in the session.
But you know what? That's more like it from Sergio Perez, who does go fastest for the time being. His teammate will eclipse him as he comes across the line. I say it's more like it.
By 0.6 of a second, by the way, Verstappen over Perez.
Yeah, 0.6 of a second, but crucially, at least Perez is the man who is second, rather than just making his way through each session as he has done. It's still early stages, and did Verstappen actually get a little bit out of shape coming through Stavolo and then entering the Paul Frere curve? He did. The rear end just stepping out in the touch, and I think so too for Piastri. Let's listen. Oh, you hear it there. The revs just suddenly rise as he tries to correct the rear end of that McLaren from spinning out into the gravel. He's got a bit of a penchant for gravel. He saw it in Hungary a couple of times as well, just kicking up the dust.
Yeah, he did just dip the right rear wheel into the gravel, and that's when you heard the engine note just pick up as the wheel spin kicked in, engine revs rising. It's obviously not the fastest way around a racetrack, but it definitely looks cool on the replays, doesn't it?
Well, it was still enough to go quicker than his teammate, fourth fastest. Verstappen then, fastest, a 1:53.1, 6/10 the gap between himself and Perez. Hamilton is next in third, ahead of Piastri. Then it's Russell, a second off Verstappen, down in fifth. Norris is sixth. The two Ferraris, 7th and 8th. Alonso 9th, Ocon in 10th. And that, you know what, it's about right, really. The Ferraris aren't on par with the Mercedes and McLaren. And I think these cooler temperatures and mixed conditions are favouring slightly the Mercedes at this stage, because McLaren have the faster car in the dry.
Yeah, and Mercedes going back, as Andrew Benson told us earlier on, going back to the previous car specification when it comes to the floor, something that worked very well for them at Silverstone. They brought something new to this race, but because of these mixed conditions weren't really able to properly test it and get a good read on it. So going back to what was the original specification, or the previous specification, seems to be, at least it's a known quantity, at least it's something that the drivers are familiar with. They know what they're going to get out of it. And as we've got a similar type of circuit to Silverstone, we've even got similar type of conditions, it could all come back towards the Mercedes a little bit.
Worth reminding you that while he is fastest and on course for pole position, Max Verstappen, regardless of where he ends this session, will get a 10-place grid penalty for exceeding his power unit allocation. We were expecting it to happen at some point. We were very much expecting it to happen here in Belgium, because this is where they usually take it every year, because it is a track you can overtake on. Indeed, Yuki Tsunoda in the RB has also done the same thing. He'll start plumb last, but at the moment Verstappen set to get pole position and then be demoted to 11th place. That's where he'll start if he does indeed secure the fastest lap at the end of the next 3.5 minutes or so.
Well, Lewis Hamilton just about to close out his lap. It's a lap at the moment that looks just about good enough to perhaps beat Perez, but nowhere near getting close to the likes of Verstappen, who currently sits fastest of anybody. He's coming through the final chicane now. He'll be desperate to get on the throttle, but he just has to wait to straighten the car up, plants the throttle pedal all the way down, and there he is in P3 actually, so just behind Sergio Perez. So it is still the two Red Bulls ahead of Hamilton and then Piastri.
Yeah, Piastri didn't improve his time. Russell does improve his time, but stays in fifth. Hamilton was already third and did improve his time, about 700ths away from Perez ahead of him. Lando Norris is actually the only one to improve significantly on that last run. Gets himself up into fourth ahead of his teammate. Both McLarens 8/10ths away from Max Verstappen, who is emerging from the pit lane for a final run.
It's massive gaps, isn't it, between all of the drivers in the top 10 at the moment. We've got Verstappen to Perez is about 6/10ths. There's another 6 to 7/10ths back to Hamilton. 8/10ths then back to Norris. Another 8/10ths back to Piastri, and over second from that back to Russell. So it's a long circuit, very long lap time. So the gaps tend to be a lot bigger than, say, what we had last time out in Hungary, where we tend to get very, very small gaps. And a tiny improvement can catapult you up the order. You need to make significant improvements here over a number of corners typically to close a big gap like 6 or 8/10ths.
Well, if it stays like this, Sergio Perez could well be in line for his first pole position of the season. Can't believe we'd be saying that. And that would go some way to laying out his cause for keeping that seat. But the gap at the moment of 0.6 of a second, well, that might be another factor to go against if Red Bull are weighing up a pro and cons list throughout the summer. 2 minutes to go then of this final part of qualifying ahead of the Belgian Grand Prix, which will get going across the BBC Sport website and app. Will be on air tomorrow from 1:45 in the afternoon ahead of Lights Out from 2 o'clock. You can hear us on the website and app, and indeed your smart speaker of choice. But right now, the fight for pole position and your spot in the top 10 is on. We have set the lower half of the grid as now the likes of the two Ferraris trying to find any more time in the bank. At the moment, they are on the back foot. Neither Sainz nor Leclerc have been able to match the Mercedes or the McLarens ahead of them. Red Bull seem like they're in a league of their own. Verstappen certainly is with these conditions. Indeed, in the dry, he was just as quick. 1 minute left on the clock. Sainz and Leclerc embarking on their final laps.
Yeah, so the two Ferraris going out at the first of this final group. They've got a nice clear track in front of them. Leclerc has the potential to get a little bit of a drag, a tow along the Kemmel Straight, which is along now behind Carlos Sainz. And then there's a nice big gap to Verstappen, who then leads a little bunch of cars. So Verstappen will also have a nice clear track ahead of him as well. Alonso and then Piastri, Hamilton in that mix. And everybody now trying to find their gaps as they bunch up through the final chicane and start their own flying laps.
Okay, so Leclerc has had a better sector one compared to teammate Sainz, but Sainz actually going slightly better in that middle sector. But Lando Norris just been told on the radio they think the rain might be increasing around the circuit, and perhaps in that middle sector we're seeing a slight increase in intensity of the rain. But Sainz and Leclerc okay through the middle sector, both finding themselves a little bit of time. Verstappen embarking on another lap as well. He's just come into the middle sector. So too has Lewis Hamilton. Piastri and Lando Norris not really finding any time for their efforts, and I don't think they'll even really, well, Piastri finding slightly more time in the middle sector. They are still going for it, but it is game on for Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Which Ferrari will be in front of the other? Right now Leclerc leads the way, 7-6 qualifying head-to-head. Right now it's Sainz in 7th, improves his time but stays in 7th, can't find anything to pit the Mercedes or the McLarens in front of him. What can Charles Leclerc do though? Fantastic lap from Leclerc, gets himself up into 2nd, half a second away from Verstappen. Sainz couldn't manage it, Leclerc certainly could. What a lap from the Monegasque.
Yeah, really good from the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Sergio Perez now actually is not doing a good enough lap, so Sergio Perez I don't think is going to improve at all, which means he will not take the de facto pole position once Max Verstappen is demoted with his penalty. And that for me should be the very minimum expectation of a Red Bull on this circuit in these conditions that we know is the dominant car.
Max Verstappen across the line actually has the fastest final sector of anybody, but weirdly doesn't improve on his last lap time, stays fastest and looks like he will secure pole position, but because he will have a 10-place grid penalty, he will start in 11th place. Still a couple of laps to be finished off, but nobody is finding time. Indeed, Hamilton has bailed out of it. Perez will not find any lap time. Perez will not start on the front row. Well, he will start on the front row, but only because he is inheriting it after Verstappen. His teammate gets a 10-place grid penalty, but as you said, Mark, the position where Perez should be starting from tomorrow is pole position. That is not the case. Verstappen gets pole on the road, but with a 10-place grid penalty, starts in 11th. That means Charles Leclerc will start on pole for the Belgian Grand Prix, rescuing Ferrari's efforts so far this weekend. He'll share the front row with Sergio Perez. Lewis Hamilton will be just behind them. Then it'll be the two McLarens, Norris ahead of Piastri. Russell, though, down, qualified 7th on the road, ahead of Sainz, who will be disappointed with that final effort. Alonso and Ocon rounding out the top 10, and then Verstappen will start the Grand Prix from 11th.
I mean, what a swing a week makes, and a different type of racetrack with different types of conditions, because it's now very clearly, I think, the Mercedes that seems to be very much on par with the McLaren, and a bit of a surprise, Charles Leclerc finding his way right up into the front row in a car that we've actually been talking about even earlier on in this session, really not suiting these conditions in this track.
That was an excellent session. Well done. Let's look forward to tomorrow.
So we called that a fall.
kind of, again here.
Well, Max, that was absolutely brilliant. All three sessions. So first part of it done. So super job, Checo on the front row.
Yeah, fantastic effort, guys. Yeah, let's see what we can do tomorrow. But today was a very good day. Well done, everyone, and also a big thank you to all the mechanics for working so late last night. Great job. Thank you very much. It's yeah, really appreciate it.
Superb effort from Max Verstappen, but I'm afraid once again that won't be a pole position in the record books for Verstappen at the Belgian Grand Prix. Quickest in Q3 here for the 4th consecutive year, but he'll lose pole due to a penalty for the 3rd consecutive year in a row. Charles Leclerc, the benefactor, but it was a mighty lap from Leclerc. Less than a 10th between Leclerc and Perez at the end. Perez will start second, and well, that will be Sergio Perez's best start in a Grand Prix. You have to go all the way back to China.
Yeah, I mean, look, Perez, let's give him the positives here. He's put himself in a really strong position for tomorrow because he's on the front row with a car that, in anybody's book, is quicker than a Ferrari, particularly around a circuit here. This circuit is suited to that Red Bull. In the dry yesterday, we saw Verstappen particularly dominating everybody. Nobody was in a country mile of with it being within him. So Sergio has a great opportunity in the Grand Prix. But there's always going to be this asterisk. Why on earth is he getting beaten by a Ferrari around this track in qualifying? When his teammate's out of the picture, he should have been the next in line. And that will always be the question. When Red Bull are looking at number 2 drivers or second drivers to Max Verstappen, they want someone who's capable of slotting in straight behind him, or when Max isn't there, when he has a problem or it's an issue like today, the second driver needs to be the one to take pole position or to take the race win, and that's the problem that Red Bull have got. It's a problem that also may well end up costing them over a longer term things like Constructors' Championships.
It certainly will. Charles Leclerc just in the FIA garage getting weighed and now looking rather forlornly into the distance to the lap times. His teammate Carlos Sainz joins him and gives him a handshake. Sainz will be really disappointed with his last lap around, only enough for 8th fastest. I mean, both Ferraris looked like they were struggling, but Leclerc really pulled it out of the bag right at the very end to take his 2nd pole of the season, 25th career pole for the Monegasque, and will share that front row with Sergio Perez, who will start in P2, and Lewis Hamilton just behind. So that should shape us up for quite a nice opening to the Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, don't discount Verstappen. I think it'll be a tall order to come through and take anything like a race win tomorrow. But he's got a very fast car on a circuit you can overtake on. He's in great form. He's loving it round here. Who knows what he can achieve?
Let's wait and see. We'll hear from our driver who was fastest in Q1 in a few moments' time down in Parc Fermé, and it will be Billy Munger who will do the interviews.
Checo Perez, a good qualifying for you there, P3, but you will line up second on the grid for tomorrow's race with your teammate's penalty. How was it out there for you?
Yeah, it was very tricky at times. Obviously, as always, in these conditions, it's so easy for it to go wrong, as it's been going in the last few qualifyings in these conditions. And yeah, I mean, it was good to finally put it together. Unfortunately, we didn't have any new tires for Q3. We were a bit out of sync in Q2, so we were also quite lucky to make it in P10. And I think P2 is probably the best position you can wish for in the Spa. It was the same with Charles last year, so I'm gonna be trying tomorrow to be the same. And yeah, it's a long race ahead of us. It looks like it's gonna be dry, so we'll see.
And going into the race tomorrow, obviously qualifying's been a part of your season that has been under pressure, especially the last few races. It hasn't gone to plan. What was your mindset going into this weekend, knowing that Spa's a circuit that in previous years has suited your car pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, like I've always said, every weekend it's a new opportunity to do better every day. Tomorrow is a new opportunity for us to do even better than today and go for that win.
And that opportunity, you mentioned the race tomorrow, you'll be starting on the front row. What can you do tomorrow, Sergio? Are you capable of winning this race?
we'll see. You know, it's a very long race ahead of us. I think tomorrow degradation will be quite tricky, and graining, you know, with this new tarmac. I think there are a lot of unknowns still, but I got a good feeling for tomorrow, so we'll see.
Congratulations. Good luck for tomorrow, Sergio. Charles Leclerc, second in qualifying today, but you will line up on pole position tomorrow. Pretty similar to last year in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same. It's good. I mean, I definitely did not expect that this weekend. Obviously, with the tricky conditions, we could do something above our expectations. So it's a good day for the team. Now we need to focus on tomorrow and see what will happen whenever the rain is gone.
So do you think the conditions today, the fact we had the mixed conditions out there and it looked tricky for the drive from the driver's point of view, do you think that helped you make the difference today?
Yeah. I think that without this rain, probably P5 it was the position we were fighting for with the Mercedes especially. But obviously with the rain, it helped us a little bit. But I'm not going to complain. I'm really happy. I'm very happy with the lap in Q3, and it's good to be back on the front part of the grid. But now we've got to finalize that tomorrow.
And tomorrow you'll be starting from pole. What's your approach going to be going up for Eau Rouge on that first lap if you're still in the lead? Because it could be a tricky race to lead the first lap around here.
Yeah, it's not the easiest first place to keep on the first lap here, but honestly, I will see it. Every starts are different, and then once I'll be in the car tomorrow through Eau Rouge, I'll decide what's the best thing I can do. But obviously, I'll try to keep that first place.
Good luck for tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Max Verstappen, another pole position for you this weekend. Unfortunately, you won't line up in pole position because of the grid penalty. But talk us through that lap, because that was exceptional out there.
Yeah, it was a nice qualifying. You know, luckily the weather was okay. You know, it was just raining a little bit, but at least we could do a decent qualifying, and yeah, everything worked well. Every tire set that we were on, you know, we could just do good lap times. I was of course also thinking about Q3, not knowing if it was going to dry out, so I was trying to keep 2 new sets for Q3, and luckily we escaped in Q1, Q2. So yeah, very happy. I mean, the car was working quite well in the wet. I could just do my laps and try to, you know, do clean lap times in the wet, which is always quite tricky. But tomorrow, of course, I know that it's quite a different day. It's going to be warmer, normally no rain, so it's all about, you know, tire degradation, and we just need to make sure we're good on that. I know that, of course, I have to start also 10 places back, so this was the best I could do today, and then go from there. I don't know how quick we're going to be. I hope that we can be in the mix, you know, to try and move forward.
And then coming into this weekend, you probably knew within the team that you were going to take this grid penalty and make the decision that you have. You started out of position here in Spa. What's your approach going to be down into turn 1? Because it's a tight corner, it can really get a bit chaotic at times there. Yeah,
race can be lost, of course, in turn 1. So just need to see what happens, you know, in the start naturally, and just go from there. It's a very long race. It's very hard on tires, and just need to try and manage that as good as we can, and hopefully then we can be competitive tomorrow.
It's been a couple of races since you've won a Grand Prix. Starting where you are tomorrow, you think you can bounce back after last weekend and get a race victory? How quick is your car in race?
We are not making it easy on ourselves, and especially, of course, in the battle that we're in. I know that today was a great day, but it's in the wet. We need to be quick in the dry tomorrow. But it's going to be a tough battle. We'll try to do the best we can. Hopefully we can battle, you know, with the Ferraris and the Mercedes, of course, ahead. And if we have a bit of luck, of course, maybe we can challenge the McLaren.
Good luck for tomorrow, Max.
Right, thank you.
Billy Munger asking the questions to the top 3 finishers in qualifying. Max Verstappen taking pole position ahead of Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez. Guys, it wasn't the sort of all singing, all dancing qualifying that perhaps we were expecting this afternoon. Are you surprised to see Charles Leclerc there right up at the sharp end, Harry?
Well, I know he's a great driver, obviously, but from where Ferrari were, they seemed like both in dry and wet conditions that they just didn't quite have the outright pace compared to the Mercedes and the McLarens. But of course, we're going on such limited data so far this weekend that we haven't been able to see truly what they've got. We know they have been working to try and fix some bouncing issues that developed on both Ferraris, and as a consequence of that, they've lost a bit of time, particularly on the straights, to try and stop their bouncing, which I thought would hurt them more here. But either way, Leclerc showcased a brilliant lap. There was clearly time in that, and Sainz couldn't match him. So that was the reasoning for my surprise there. But fair play to him.
Yeah, and Charles Leclerc is going to hope he can get a great start off the line and hold on to that lead for as long as possible, because we know what Max Verstappen's been like here in the past, Mark, with penalties. He's won from 14th on the grid before, back in 2022. And he said yesterday after FP2, the second practice session, that the race is their focus. Surely this qualifying performance is ominous, given you'd think he's therefore set the car up for race trim, which we think will be in the dry tomorrow. So is he just going to be picking people off? Is it going to be Max Verstappen and Red Bull of old now?
Well, I mean, I kind of hope so, because it would put quite a spectacle on for us all, wouldn't it? But he doesn't have the dominant car that he had back in 2022, where he was so much faster than everybody else. Even starting outside the top 10, you'd still say got a very good chance of winning the Grand Prix. This time around, he has competition. I still think he's got the fastest car, particularly in the dry tomorrow. If you look at Friday's practice sessions, Max and Red Bull were dominant, you know, in the long run pace, but also in the short run stuff as well. They just looked dominant everywhere. McLaren looked very, very good, and I think McLaren will be the ones to really watch tomorrow. Though it's not the best qualifying for Lando or Oscar Piastri, I do think they have the best race car. But I think Max Verstappen is going to be the one to really keep us entertained, because he will move forward. The question is just going to be how far forward he can get.
Yeah, and it sounded funny almost listening to him sounding sort of worried about their dry pace running, because it's almost like he's forgotten how quick he was in FP1, which of course was dry yesterday afternoon. So we're set pretty nicely, I think, for an entertaining Grand Prix come tomorrow afternoon. Max Verstappen starting from P11, Charles Leclerc leading the field away from the pole position spot, and it'll be Sergio Perez alongside him on the front row. Thank you to Mark Priestley and Harry Benjamin, cosy in the commentary box, for having spoken and talked us through that qualifying session. We will be back tomorrow at 1:45 on the website and on your smart speaker of choice. Do join us then for the Belgian Grand Prix. We hope it's going to be an exciting one. Will it be dry, or will the rain come to play again? Hopefully you'll be able to join us tomorrow afternoon for the Belgian Grand Prix. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.